Hi guys, this is Hirosaki. This story is all about what if Naruto was in Avatar. The world could not maintain the peace that Naruto fought for in Jiraiya's memory. With a heavy heart, he forsakes his time and seals himself away in hopes of a peaceful future. What happens when a girl who wishes to express herself finds the sealed body of the hero of the flame, unleashes him, and learns from him? What will the future hold for the world? Before we start, kindly like and subscribe to this channel, and look over the description box for the author of this amazing storyline. Welcome aboard. Chapter 7, Threats in Omashu. Long ago, Naruto began, centuries before the founding of the hidden shinobi villages. The Rikudo Sannin saved the world from the Jubi. He managed to subdue the beast and seal it within his own body, becoming the first Jinchuriki, or human sacrifice. However, this offered merely a temporary solution to the great beast. In the event of his death, the seal would dissolve and the Jubi would once again be unleashed upon the world. So, what did he do? Asked Aang while the others listened quietly. The sage searched for a more permanent solution to seal it away. Ultimately, he succeeded by using his creation of all things ability to separate the Jubi's energy from its body and divide it into 9 separate constructs that would later become known as the Biju, or tailed beasts. The Kyubi is one of those constructs that is sealed away within me. But sensei, if only the energy was removed, then what happened to the body of the Jubi? Asked the Nara descendant. Patience, I was getting to that. As a final precaution, using Chibaku Tensei, or heavenly body bursting from the earth, the sage entombed the physical remains of the Jubi within a colossal stone prison and hurled it into the heavens. Naruto waved his hand to the sky, creating the moon. The astonishing feat of not only successfully sealing the great beast, but also suppressing it, made the sage a deified hero throughout the shinobi world. Katara looked to him in complete shock. So, the power we waterbenders draw upon wasn't the moon, but the Jubi? No, the power you draw upon is still the moon, or rather its spirit. The Rikudo Sannin unknowingly assisted in the creation of the many spirits that watch over our world today. The moon spirit is perhaps the most vital and important one of them all now. If anything happens to it, or the moon itself, the Jubi's power will begin to leak out and spread across the world. Then that means that it's even more important that we get to the North Pole as fast as we can, Sokka commented. Gran told us stories of how the Northern Water Tribe was closest to the moon and ocean spirits. It'd probably be easier for us to protect the moon spirit there. Exactly. Avatar dash. My name is Aang. Fine then. Aang, it's plain to see that you are far from being a fully realized avatar, like Roku was when he was the Avatar. However, that doesn't mean that there isn't time to fix that. You have a duty to the world now, and you can't waste your time messing around. I realize you are still young, but I started out that way as well. How old were you when you became a shinobi? Aang asked. What is a shinobi anyway? And what is chakra and jutsu and all the other things you mentioned? Questioned Sokka. In that order, I started out at 14. Shinobi, also known as ninja, are people who can utilize the inner energy known as chakra. Chakra is the balance of chi, physical energy, and ryuryoku, spiritual energy, and jutsu are the abilities that shinobi are capable with chakra. Any more questions, or can I continue? Katara gave her brother a stern look before Sokka could open his mouth. I think we're good. Please continue. Naruto and Mai gave small smirks at how the waterbender easily controlled her brother. As I was saying, you may be young, but the world is needed you now more than ever. What about you though? I mean, you said you were the peacekeeper of your time. Why can't you help the world now? Asked the airbender. Who said I wouldn't? All I am saying is that the greatest threat is in the spirit world, a place only the Avatar can go to. Aang nodded before he moved to Appa's head and grabbed the reins. As he steered the bison through the air, he asked, So, how am I supposed to prepare for the Jubi? I mean, you said the sage sealed into the moon, but nothing about defeating it. That's because he physically battled it. You need to spiritually do so. The only way I truly think you can stand a chance is if you master your avatar abilities, like the power you used back at the Air Temple. You saw that? Yes, and I know that you were not using your own strength then. Your past lives were offering their strength to you back then. When you master your own avatar power, it will no doubt be much more powerful. So, how do I do that? How do I master my avatar state? Aang asked him and the others. Naruto and Mai closed their eyes in thought, while Katara and Sokka looked lost on any type of answer. Sensei? Yes, Mai? What if we talked to someone who was knowledgeable on things spiritually related, someone who was old enough to know? It wouldn't be a bad idea, however. I doubt anyone like that would be easy to find. Maybe if we had a place that stored information of past events and people. Like a library? Asked Katara. Yes, or something like that. There's a pretty big library in the Earth Kingdom city of Omashu, Aang offered. There are all kinds of information there, or at least there should be. I used to hang out there with my friend Bumi 100 years ago. Naruto nodded. Then to Omashu we go. It took a few days to arrive to the outskirts of the city of Omashu, and during the times of day when the group allowed Appa to rest, Naruto continued Mai's training in Raiten techniques, and she was getting the hang of using the Chidori. It wouldn't be long before Naruto felt her ready for the variants of the jutsu that Sasuke had ingeniously come up with. Naruto may dislike the Uchiha, but he couldn't deny that Sasuke had a talent for jutsu creation. Aang spent the times between flying and thought over all of what Naruto had told him. It was nerve-wracking hearing of the Jubi, and its high chance of returning. Not to mention that he'd have to learn how to access the spirit world in order to confront it. Katara was worried for Aang, but she knew that he needed time to think things through. She couldn't blame him in the slightest for being afraid or worried, seeing as he already had quite a lot on his plate. She spent the breaks practicing her bending and making sure there was food for everyone. She was the second best cook they had, Naruto being the first, but he had a clone teaching her some cooking techniques. Sokka decided to let Aang try and deal with his problems on his own. It was too much for the Water Tribe warrior to fully comprehend anyway. Granted, he was worried about Aang slightly, but he had faith that the airbender would pull through. He spent the breaks looking over the map Aang had and thinking of quicker routes to the North Pole. He also practiced with his machete and boomerang as well as other physical exercises. Another thing Naruto did was reflect on his actions during the past years. He realized that he was dwelling on his past still, and had a good, long look at his reflection in the water one day. Kami-sama, look at me. I look like an avatar of death, not a shinobi of Konoha. Kurama, I think it's time for one last change. Well, it's about time. I was wondering when you'd finally lose the Madara look. Yeah. His image is definitely not something I want to pass down to the world. He then pulled out a kunai and a worn-out sealing scroll before a small smile came to his face. Time for the real Naruto Uzumaki to make his grand reappearance. When he returned to the group, they were surprised to see his new appearance, especially Mai, since she was so used to his Madara-like look. Naruto stood before them with his hair cut down to the length he had it during the Fourth Great War, and he wore black sandals, orange pants, an orange jacket with black coloring on the upper torso and arms, his Sannin cloak over his jacket, and his Yuzu Hayate on his forehead. The group saw his whiskered, slightly scarred face and dual-colored eyes completely, and it amazed Mai that her teacher could look so attractive, yet also have an air of power and authority. 1. The view of Omashu was incredible to the gang. The tall mountain peak on which Omashu was founded was located in the Kola Mountains in the southwestern Earth Kingdom. The city was built high out of a deep chasm and was created in the shape of mountain peaks. Naruto saw this as a clever form of camouflage and noticed that being built on the mountain provided the city with one of its best defenses. The only way to reach the gates of Omashu was across a long narrow bridge of stone that spanned the sheer gorge. Welcome to the Earth Kingdom city of Omashu. Aang exclaimed with a smile. It's amazing. Katara commented. Definitely the biggest city I've ever seen, Sokka added. It certainly is interesting seeing a mountain peak-styled city. It reminds me of Kumogakure somewhat, Naruto stated while Mai simply stayed quiet. Well, come on, let's go and already. Aang said as he made his way to the gates. Hold on, Aang. I think you should wear a disguise while we're in the city. There might be some people who dislike the Avatar since you were frozen during the war, Katara advised. That's a good idea, but he won't need a disguise, Naruto said with a small smirk. At their confused stares, he elaborated by flowing chakra into his implanted eye and focusing it on Aang. Before everyone's eyes, the airbender faded away into nothingness. Aang, where are you? Katara asked worriedly. I didn't move, his voice replied. You won't be able to see him since I've placed a simple illusion over his form. To those who are not experienced with chakra, they can hear him and feel him, however, they will not be able to see him. Sokka poked at the empty space where Aang was and felt his finger hit clothed flesh. He kept poking before Aang had enough and sidestepped, making Sokka's hand stretch out with no resistance. Now that he is unseen to the normal eye, we can easily enter the city, Naruto said while gently pushing Aang forward. He needed his Sharingan to stay focused on the boy or else the illusion would drop. The guards at the gates gave them a little trouble since Naruto and Mai wore colors of the Fire Nation, but Katara assured them that they meant no harm, making the two shinobi and sealed Bija mentally scoff. Once they made it into the city, Naruto tweaked his Genjutsu so that Aang could be visible, but be seen as an average brunette with brown eyes. As they traversed the city, Aang was able to lead the group to the library by his old memories of the city. They had to persuade the guards into letting them in, but it was nothing a little suggestive illusion couldn't handle. Once inside, they saw it was divided into an eastern and western wing. We should split up, Naruto commented. You three go down the east wing while Mai and I go down the west wing. We'll meet back here in 1 hour. The others nodded before they separated. Naruto and Mai went west and perused through the many shelves of books. Their use of Kagebunshin was extremely efficient in cutting down the time needed. Mai was lucky enough to come across a book that held documentation of Avatar Kyoshi's exploits during her time as peacekeeper. One of the documents told of her path to self-enlightenment which resulted in her control of her avatar state. She pulled out a scroll and had a clone seal the documents before she continued her search. Naruto and his many clones were not only looking for references for Aang to use, but were also studying the history of the world in general. It amazed him that the world practically started over after he sealed himself away. He also believed that the people going this far already without the use of chakra or jutsu was nothing short of impressive. Naruto continued skimming through books before his fingers traced an extremely worn-out book, and he pulled it out. It was dusty, the spine was missing, and the pages were barely kept together, but he still found it legible. Blowing off the dust, he read the title. The Sacrificed Hero. Interesting name for this. He flipped through a few pages before a familiar name was seen on the pages. Jiraiya. Hee. Sensei, what would you think of my actions if you were alive? Would you have been accepting of my choices, or disappointed? He shook his head out of those thoughts before he sealed away the book into a scroll and continued his perusing. The two shinobi were interrupted by the sound of crashing and a faint cry of, "My cabbages." Naruto sighed in annoyance while Mai muttered her clan's famous catchphrase. We better go make sure they haven't caused too much of a ruckus, Naruto said before he and Mai made their way out of the library just in time to see some earthbender guards leading the bound gang towards the palace. Excuse me, sir, Naruto called out to them, making them stop and look at him. Those three are with me. Did they do something wrong? He mentally thought of how ridiculous he sounded since he knew they did do something wrong. Yes, they took a joyride on one of the carts of our mailing system and caused multiple amounts of property damage to the city. Naruto gave the bald monk a pointed look while Aang merely looked sheepish. I see. If you don't mind, I'd like to come with you so that I may assess the consequences and see if I may do something about them. The guard was silent in thought before he slowly nodded. Very well. However, you are to be silent unless spoken to. Is that clear? Crystal. Throne room. Then sight of the king of Omashu was quite surprising to the gang in Shinobi. He looked like a frail and extremely elderly man, but Naruto sensed his power and felt it was easily near Kage level. Not bad for an old man. He looks older than Inoki. Your Highness, these three are charged with vandalism, destruction of property, and malicious destruction of cabbages. What do you want us to do, sir? The king took a good long look at Aang, making him fidget slightly, and Naruto was surprised to find that he couldn't get a good empathic reading on the man. Throw them, he began, making the trio look worried. A feast. Naruto and my sweat dropped while everyone else looked incredibly confused. The guards hesitantly nodded before a feast was prepared for the group of three, while Naruto and Mai were graciously invited to sit and eat as well, much to their suspicion. So young man, where do you come from? Asked the king to Aang. I come from Kangaroo Island. Oh, Kangaroo Island, huh? I hear that place is really hopping. The room was silent except for Sokka, who laughed at the joke. When the others turned to him, he grew embarrassed. What? It was funny. The king then made a slightly exaggerated yawn as he stood from the table. Well, these old bones of mine are quite tired. I guess it's time to hit the hay. He cried while hurling a drumstick of chicken at Aang, who caught it instinctively with the use of airbending. The guards looked on in surprise while the king continued, there's an airbender in our presence, and not just any airbender, the Avatar. After the revelation of Aang's true identity, the gang tried to leave but were halted by the guards. Naruto contemplated stepping in, but he decided against it since he was curious as to where the king was going with his actions. The king had Katara and Sokka wear rings made of geminite, which was also known as the creeping crystal. He then told Aang that he'd free them after the airbender performed 3 tests for him before the dawn of the following morning. Aang readily agreed to them and was led to an underground cavern for his first test. The cavern was filled with stalagmites and stalactites, while a waterfall raged down on a ladder and a key hanging on a chain. Your first test is to get that key. It belongs to my lunchbox and I'm quite famished, said the king with a slightly crazed grin. Aang narrowed his eyes in determination before he rushed toward the waterfall and attempted to climb it by using airbending. Naruto shook his head and commented next to Mai, that won't work. No matter how much air he uses, the waterfall's power is too great. Naruto was proven correct when Aang was blasted out of the rushing water. Not willing to give up, he jumped up the ceiling of the cavern before he dove at the waterfall in an airbending drill-like spin. He was once again unsuccessful and thrown away from the water, much to the king's amusement and the water tribe members' worry. As Aang hung onto a stalactite, an idea came to him. He sliced off the top half of it and threw it at the chain before he shot a wave of air to increase its speed. Naruto smirked at the kid's plan and was pleased to see that the earthen projectile cut through the chain and stabbed it into the wall with the key dangling in front of the king's face. There, you can have your lunch. Aang yelled. I want my friends back now. Not yet, Avatar. I need another favor. It seems that I've lost my dear pet, Flopsy. Aang groaned before he ran through the palace in search of the pet, though he had no idea what it was. He then spotted a rabbit with incredibly long ears sniffing around in an arena-like area. Okay, I found him. Bring him to me, ordered the king. Daddy wants a kiss from Flopsy. Aang was about to grab the rabbit before a large goat gorilla landed behind him and initiated a chase. The gorilla chased Aang, who chased the rabbit, who ran like hell. The rabbit soon dove into a hole, making Aang grow worried before a thought came to him. Wait a minute, he said as he turned to the goat gorilla. Flopsy? He asked, making the beast stop and turn incredibly docile. The king whistled for his found pet and began to affectionately rub its belly while gushing over it. He was interrupted by Aang approaching him. Come on, I'm ready for the last challenge, he said, making the king smirk. The group was led to a large arena where Aang was to battle an opponent. He was allowed to choose which opponent to fight, with the king warning him to choose carefully. He was able to pick one of two nasty-looking gladiator-like warriors who entered the arena, but he realized that he could choose to fight the king. I choose you, Aang stated, pointing to him. The king smiled and chuckled at the airbender's decision. Wrong choice, he commented while removing his robes to reveal a surprisingly muscular physique in stark contrast to his incredible age. The king immediately began the duel by launching several boulders at Aang. The avatar dodged, but the king taunts him for such a predictable airbender tactic. He continued launching multiple pieces of earth, forcing Aang to dodge, as he continued to taunt Aang for his unwillingness to fight back. Aang grew irritated and began to counter the king with airbending strikes, but the earthbender easily blocked them with raised walls of earth, and even joked about a draft in the room. He then decided to end it, and, with tremendous effort, the king tore a massive chunk of earth out of the ground and held it over his head. Aang gaped in terror and began to run in circles, airbending a tornado within the arena. The king threw the massive mound, but the tornado stopped it, spun it around, and redirected it back at him. Shocked at the reversal of his technique, the king bisected it neatly in two, but Aang appeared out of the dust and pinned the king with his staff. The king smiled and gave a small laugh at his loss. Well done, Avatar. You fight with much fire in your heart. He then used earthbending to move himself underground and appear next to the Water Tribe members. You've completed my tasks, but now you must answer one question. That's no fair. You said you'd let my friends go after I completed your tests. Oh, but what's the point of tests if you don't learn anything? Oh, come on. Sokka complained. Answer this one question correctly, and I'll let your friends go. What is my name? Aang gaped in surprise at the question, making the king chuckle. By the looks of your friends, I'd say that you only have about an hour or so before they're completely crystallized. Better get a move on. Oh man. What could his name be? Asked Aang worriedly. Think about the tests. Katara offered. Maybe they have clues as to what his name is. I got it. Sokka exclaimed. He's an earthbender, right? Rocky. He was met with silence. You know, because of all the rocks. We're gonna keep trying, but that is a good fallback, Katara said. Okay, back to the tests. I got a key from a waterfall, found his pet, and I had a duel. And what did you figure out from them? Well, none of them were straightforward and made me think differently. And? Katara urged as the Geminite grew slowly. Well, I had to come at them much more differently than when I was used to, which required me to think outside of the box. He then had a look of realization before he smiled. I know his name. Good, Naruto commented. Now you can find him, tell him his name, and we can get out of here. I mean, you still have to go to the North Pole, remember? Right, I'll go find him now. Throne room. Bumi, Aang said as he walked up to the king, you're a mad genius. The newly named king laughed heartily before he was embraced by his old friend. Oh Aang, it's good to see you. You haven't changed a bit, literally. After releasing his friends, Bumi told Aang that the world has changed since he was gone. He urged him to master the other elements, and that he hoped that Aang would fight like a mad genius when he confronted Ozai. Naruto smirked at the reunion before his face turned serious, and he stepped up to Bumi. Your Highness, we have a couple of questions to ask of you. Bumi gave a small smile and replied, Ask away, my ancient friend. Naruto's eye twitched slightly before he asked, We were wondering if you knew of a way for Aang to get a better understanding of the spiritual aspect of his role in the world? It may not be what you were hoping for, but if you go to Jade Peak Island, you may find something in the temples there. Many of our earthbending avatars were able to draw wisdom from that place. I don't know if it will work for Aang, but it could be worth a shot. Naruto turned to Aang, who nodded in acceptance before he said, We appreciate the help. One last thing. He then pulled out the worn-out book and presented it to Bumi. Who wrote this? Bumi gently took the book and skimmed through the pages before a look of realization made its way to his face. Ah yes, I recognize this writing style. You're looking for a man who goes by the name Rooted Tree. He stayed here ages ago and gave it to the library while saying that it was an heirloom from his family. He should know who wrote it. Naruto took the book back and stored it away before he thanked Bumi. Before the gang left the city, Aang and Bumi took one last ride on the mailing system, much to the horror of the cabbage merchant who had his cart destroyed once again. That night, as Appa flew through the evening skies, everyone but Naruto and Aang slept. Aang due to steering his friend, and Naruto because he couldn't sleep. Just earlier, he tried to get some rest, but had the same vision as the one he had at the South Pole. It was clearer this time though, since he was able to see the color of the figure's eyes. The older woman had amber eyes while the young girl had eyes of different colors. Her left eye was amber, but her right was a bright blue. By looking into their eyes, he was able to see love and joy as they waved to him. The surprise of it all caused him to wake up in a cold sweat once again before he took calming breaths. That dream again. What could it mean? Why did those two make me feel such joy, yet also such sadness? He thought to himself. So lost in his thoughts, he was not able to sense my wake up and look to him in worry. She didn't like seeing her teacher and friend look so confused and knew that he was slightly worried about the dreams he was having. She slowly stood up and made her way to him before he was hugged from behind by her. It surprised him that she was able to get through his senses, but his surprise was cut short by her words. I don't know what you see in those dreams of yours, but I want you to know that I'm here if you want to talk about them, Naruto. The last Uzumaki gave a small smile before he turned his gaze to the starlit skies. Thank you, Mai. Chapter 8, Jade Peak Island. Over the ocean Appa flew as the gang made their way to the mysterious Jade Peak Island. Aang was anxious about what he would find while Katara tried to have him calm down. Sokka was busy looking over the map for the quickest route to the North Pole. There were multiple ways they could travel, but he had to choose the most efficient one. Naruto had finally fallen asleep after his talk with Mai the previous night, while his student sat next to him. She was reading her family scrolls at first, but the conversation she had with her sensei the previous night was still running through her mind. Naruto had explained the dreams he had been having to her, and asked for her opinion on them. It was quite a surprise to her when she was told of the details of his dreams, and she had an idea of what they may be about. She had told him that the two women in the dream could possibly be his future family, the woman being a wife, and the young girl being a child. Naruto grew silent after that and merely watched the moon for the rest of the night while Mai went back to sleep. She knew that he needed time to go over it all, so she gave him some space. It turns out that the last Uzumaki had gone over it for the entire night before he finally succumbed to sleep, leaving Mai to keep the others quiet so he could do so peacefully. Mai was thinking of the possibility of Naruto dreaming about his family as well, and it worried her. Naruto had told her that he felt happier than he had ever been, for obvious reasons, but he also felt incredible sadness and regret. Various outcomes for those feelings flew through her thoughts before two stuck to her: either the woman and child would die, or Naruto would. The thought of her teacher and friend dying frightened her, and she made a silent promise to herself that she wouldn't let him die. Her thoughts were interrupted by Katara moving towards them. "How is he?" asked the waterbender. "He's still resting. He had a long night." Katara nodded before she asked the one thing that she, her brother, and Aang had all been wondering. "How did you two meet?" Mai gave them a suspicious look and asked back, "Why do you want to know?" Katara put up her hands in a placating manner and answered, "I didn't mean to intrude or offend, I was just curious. You two seem real close." Mai was silent at that and turned her hardened gaze to her teacher and friend. The others saw her eyes soften and a barely noticeable smile form on her lips. "Yeah. I guess you could say that Naruto-sensei and I are close." "You seem to hold him in high regard," Sokka commented. "And for good reason," Mai retorted. "He is the only person who really took the time to get to K now the real me. He also chose me as a student when he could have chosen any other person. He's also the only person I could ever call friend. Unknown to them, Naruto was silently listening as Mai spoke to the trio. He gave a small smile at her words and thought, any fool could see that the real you is much better than that mask you put over yourself, Mai. I wouldn't have chosen you as my apprentice if I did not see it. He sounds like a good person, Katara said with a small smile. Yeah, he is. I wouldn't be who I am today if I never met him, Mai stated while putting away her scroll. So, how did you two meet? Asked the airbender. To tell you the truth, it was completely by surprise that I found him. You found him? What does that mean? Asked Sokka. Just that, I found him, and that's how we met. He was wrapped around a white cocoon-like thing in this cave on Ember Island. The cocoon had a sealing tag on it that kept him in a similar state that you were in, she explained while pointing at Aang. He did not age and he was stuck there until someone worthy came and removed the seal. So, you were the worthy one? Asked Sokka while Mai nodded in response. How did he know that when he was out of it? I had Kyuubi remain awake throughout the years of my sealing, answered Naruto, surprising the others. The fox was able to sense the worthiness in Mai and had her remove the seal, freeing me in the process. After that, I went with Mai to the Fire Nation capital, spoke to that fool Ozai, demonstrated my skills in front of an audience, and took Mai as my student. Later on, she became my apprentice, and my successor as Sage of the Toads. Toads? Asked Aang in confusion. Yes, let her show you. He then turned to Mai and said, Summon Yuki here, Mai. I have some questions to ask her anyway. Mai nodded and bit her thumb before going through the necessary hand seals for the jutsu before she summoned Gamayuki in a small plume of smoke. The cat-sized toad looked around in confusion before she noticed her two summoners. Ah, Naruto and Mai. I was wondering when you'd summon me again, she said, making the trio freeze in shock while Mai and Naruto smirked. How are you, Yuki? Asked the blonde. I'm doing well, Naruto. I've been keeping an eye on the Fire Nation like you asked. Anything new happen lately? Asked the Uzumaki's apprentice. Quite a bit, actually. Ozai is slowly building up his militia, Zhao has been promoted to commander, and has begun chasing the Avatar. Some of the war meetings are speaking of conquering smaller Earth Kingdom nations, so that they could set up supply camps for some major invasion force. They also have a map of the Northern Air Temple, and a part of the Northern Water Tribe. Naruto nodded at the information while Mai processed it through her mind, and the trio looked shocked at the little toad's words. Any news on Ty Lee ever since she left for the circus? Asked Mai. She's doing very well for herself and the shows are almost always sold out. She's happier now, Mai. Mai gave a small smile at that while Naruto asked, what of Azula? Yuki gave a scowl and replied, she still worships her father and acts like the perfect daughter while increasing her training regimen. She has begun studying how to create lightning with fire bending. I see. Thank you for all of your hard work, Yuki. Go home and be with your family. You haven't seen them for a while, right? No, I haven't. I'm sure they'll be pleased to see me. Summon me if you need me again, she said as she disappeared in another plume of smoke. That toad was just talking. Sokka finally blurted out. Thank you for yelling out the obvious, my deadpan before she turned to Naruto. What should we do, sensei? For now, we focus on getting to Jade Peak Island. We'll deal with Ozai and Zhao and Dash, he said before stopping short. On second thought, I'll deal with Zhao's little ship right now, he finished before he launched himself off of Appa and stood in midair with his Kazipo. Down below the Flying Bison, a single Fire Navy ship was seen heading after them. With his Sharingan, Naruto was able to see far enough to tell that Zhao was standing on the deck issuing out commands. An opening appeared on the deck before a large catapult was raised up. Zhao ordered the rock that was about to be launched to be set aflame before he yelled out, fire. The flaming rock flew through the sky towards the last Uzumaki, who stared at it impassively. He held his hands in the tiger seal and said, "Katon, Gokakyu no Jutsu, Grand Fireball." From his lips, a large sphere of flame appeared and raced towards the fireball that Zhao's ship had launched before both met in a burst of fire and broken rock. Naruto then held his hands in the bird seal and called out, "Suitun, Soryu no Jutsu, Water Dragon." To the awe of the gang, especially Katara, water swirled in the ocean before it rose skyward and took the form of a serpentine dragon that charged at Zhao's ship. The dragon struck the catapult and ripped into the side of the ship before it fell back into the ocean. The ship slowed to a halt from the damage, and Naruto launched himself from his wind platform back onto Appa's saddle. "There, that should hold them off for a while." "How did you do that?" "That was the most amazing water technique I've ever seen," Katara asked in amazement. "Not to mention that fireball you shot and the fact that you stood in midair," Sokka added. Naruto merely smirked and stated, "Such acts, with the right training, are child's play for a shinobi." "Can you use all 4 elements?" asked Aang. "I can utilize all 5 elements, Aang. Benders use air, water, earth, and fire, while shinobi add lightning to the list. Not to mention all of the many sub-elements that can be formed from mixing 2 elements together." "Can you do that, sensei?" asked the Nara. "I can, but it is extremely difficult, especially since most are not created by my main affinities. Now, we're wasting time. We need to hurry to the island." The rest nodded before Aang began guiding Appa to the island once more. Island shore, 3 HRS later. Appa rested on the grassy shore of the island with Momo resting on the saddle. Aang was looking toward the island mountain peaks and was amazed that they shone with a green light. "Wow. I can't believe that the island really has jade peaks," he commented. "I wonder how they get that color," Katara mused out loud. "Maybe the island is rich in jade gems?" Sokka suggested with a grin. "Doubtful. If anything, those trees on the mountains most likely have leaves that shine like jade in the right light," Mai stated calmly. "You're both right," Naruto said as his dojutsu observed the island. "The leaves of the trees do have a unique jade color, but I also see a few scarce gems of jade around the island." "Do you see the temple?" asked the Avatar. "Yes. It's on the southernmost peak, and we've landed on the western shore. So, we have a long walk ahead of us, don't we?" Sokka asked glumly. "Sorry guys, but Appa's tired from all of that flying." "It shouldn't take us too long to reach the temple," Aang said enthusiastically. "Why is it that we get stuck with the optimist?" "Well, while you 3 search the temple, Mai and I will keep an eye on Appa," Naruto said as he created a clone and sent it to fetch some food and firewood. "Why aren't you 2 coming?" asked the waterbender. "Zhao and his men won't stay delayed for long. With Mai and I here to meet them, you 3 should have plenty of time to search the temple." Aang gave a grateful nod. "Thanks. Now then, let's go search that temple," he said with determination before he started walking with Sokka immediately following. Katara hesitated and turned to the 2 shinobi. "You 2 will be okay, right? Don't worry about us." "Go help Aang," Naruto assured her. "We'll be fine. After all, 2 shinobi are worth an army of firebenders, right sensei?" asked Mai. Naruto gave a small smirk and answered, "Without a doubt." Katara nodded before she followed after her brother and friend. With Zhao. "Sir, we have patched up the holes in the ship and are ready to meet up with the others at Jade Peak Island," said a soldier to his commander. "Excellent. Excellent. I was wondering when you would finally finish the repairs." "To the island, at full speed," ordered Zhao to his men. "Yes, sir." They chorused as the ship resumed its trek to the island. With the trio. While the island may have had plenty of forestation and life, it didn't mean that it lacked humidity, something that Sokka made no hesitation to complain about. "Sokka, for the last time, we get it. It's hot, we're sweaty, and we still have a ways to go. Get over it." yelled Katara to her brother. How can I get over this heat? We're gonna get lost without any food, water, or shelter while Naruto and Mai are having the time of their lives with Appa and Momo at the shore. Aang merely sighed at his friend's complaints and pushed through some more vegetation before he saw a stone stairway leading into a mountainside. Hey guys, I think I found the entrance to the temple. Oh, thank the spirits, Sokka said overdramatically. Now, we just have to go through the temple, have Aang figure out what needs to be done, and then get the hell out of here. Katara was about to admonish her brother before a faint explosion was heard back towards the west. It looks like the Fire Nation is here. Naruto and Mai can hold them off, Aang reassured her. Right now, we need to get through this temple. With the shinobi. Well, this seems like a really annoying situation, Naruto commented dryly as 4 Fire Navy ships docked on the sandy shore. What do you think, Mai? I would say that it's troublesome, but I've been so bored lately that I'm actually excited, she replied with a small smirk. Naruto shook his head with a smile and popped his neck. I guess you have a point. Time for a little excitement. The troops stepped out of the ships, totaling in over 50 of them, before one of them stepped forward. Naruto Uzumaki, by order of Fire Lord Ozai, you are to be killed for the crimes of treason, kidnapping, and unlawful possession of Fire Nation secrets. 1. I was never a citizen of the Fire Nation. 2. Mai chose to come with me. And 3. Those secrets are what I taught my student. They belong to me and whoever I choose to teach them to. Regardless of your petty arguments, we are ordered to dispose of you and take the girl back to the capital. Naruto scratched his chin thoughtfully. Is that so? You really believe that your benders have a chance against me? He chuckled at the idea of it, unnerving some of the soldiers, before he narrowed his eyes at them. The soldiers froze in fear at the slitted, blood-red eyes as Naruto spoke. Your century's too early to even scratch me. Ninpo, Kageme no Jutsu, yelled Mai as she held her hands in the rat seal and launched her shadow towards the soldiers. It latched onto about 10 of them, and the Nara had them follow her to another section of the beach. Sensei, I'll handle these soldiers. Understood, and be careful, he replied before he cut the Yuki flowing through him, snapping the men out of their primal fear. Now then, he started before he unsealed his Sannin staff, let's have a little fun. With Mai. Hold still, brat. Yelled a firebender as he launched another fireball at the girl who deftly dodged it with a well-timed backflip. I don't feel like holding still, thank you, she retorted as she flew through hand seal. Raitun, denatsu muchi. She yelled before she swung her lightning whip at her opponents. Each hit cracked with volts of electricity, making the men keep a fair distance. Damn it. That whip of hers is too dangerous, cursed one of the soldiers. Don't worry. As long as we keep our distance and wait for her to tire out, we'll be fine, stated another. You would think that, wouldn't you? Thought Mai with a smirk before she flew through more seals ending on the dragon seal. Raitun, Jibashi, electromagnetic murder. She called as a wave of electricity flew from her hands and struck half of the soldiers. The soldiers hit by the jutsu were shocked into unconsciousness with small volts of electricity dancing across their bodies every few seconds. Damn, she's too strong, said a firebender as he released a wave of fire at her. The flames struck her, making her scream in pain and the bender smirk. That ought to teach that little brat. Oh really? Called out Mai's voice from behind the bender. He turned to see her perfectly unscathed. What was it you were trying to teach me? She asked in boredom. How did she dash? He thought before a chain made of shadows wrapped around his neck and threw him into another soldier. Soon, more shadow chains sprung from the sand and wrapped around the remaining 3 soldiers before they were all lifted into the air and slammed into one another, rendering them unconscious. Mai nodded to herself and was about to return to her teacher before she heard a small groan and saw the firebender who called her brat slowly get up. Well, you're made of some tougher stuff than I originally thought, she commented dryly. You little brat. You'll pay for this humiliation. He yelled before he went through the motions for bending lightning. He was nearly finished before Mai pointed her middle and pointer fingers at his chest. Not today, she said as she released her John, false darkness, at him. The shot of blue lightning pierced through his chest, making him freeze in shock before his eyes glazed over, and he fell dead. Mai stared at the body with regret and whispered, "I'm sorry," before she left to back up her teacher. With Naruto. The blonde ducked under another fireball before he lashed out with his staff and struck one of the soldiers. The blow had small amounts of senjutsu in it, making the soldier's wound slowly be encased in stone and scaring the other soldiers. "You know, if you keep getting close, you'll turn to stone eventually," commented the Jinchuriki as he readied his weapon. The soldiers looked to one another and nodded before they all let loose a stream of flame at the Uzumaki. The blonde smirked and activated his Kamui, letting the flames harmlessly fly through him and strike unintended targets. He released the technique before he shook his head in disappointment. "Really now, is this all you guys are capable of? And you actually thought you'd have a chance at killing me?" The 18 soldiers, once numbering 40, all took small steps back in fear. "What do we do now?" asked one of them in slight panic. "You fight on and kill that man in the name of Lord Ozai," called out Zhao as his ship landed on the shore, and he stepped off with 20 extra men. "Ah, Commander Zhao," Naruto greeted before giving a mock bow. "You grace me with your presence at last. Save your jokes for the afterlife, Uzumaki. You're set to die here today, and your little student will be returned to the Fire Nation where she will help raise up a new breed of Fire Nation soldier. Technically, shinobi aren't a new breed. They were around over 4 millennia ago," Zhao, Naruto said with a smirk. "That may be, but the kind the Fire Nation will raise will far supersede the ones from your time, you relic of the past." Naruto shrugged and sealed away his staff before a gust of wind flew around the soldiers, and they were launched into the water by an unseen force. Zhao was left untouched, and he saw Naruto's form flicker slightly when the wind picked up. "An interesting trick, Uzumaki," he said stoically. "What do you do for an encore?" Naruto stared impassively at him before his body dissolved into a flock of ravens that flew around Zhao, each with blue and red eyes. A few formed together into Naruto's upper body floating in midair, with the rest kept circling the Fire Nation commander. "What makes you think that the Fire Nation will succeed in killing me and taking Mai? After all, you alone could die in a mere second by my hands, Ozai in a few seconds. Where does your confidence in your nation hail from?" "I serve my nation proudly, something you never did, Uzumaki. I've read your history, and you left your people to die twice in one lifetime. What do you know about loyalty to one's country?" Naruto closed his eyes at that and replied, "You're right. I don't know about loyalty to my country. However, I have a loyalty to something much more important." "And what is that?" The Uzumaki's eyes snapped open, revealing his Yuki-enhanced pupils, and the ravens all transformed into shuriken before they flew at Zhao. As the sliced into the commander, making him growl in pain, he answered, "I serve my precious people." Zhao fell to a knee in pain and glared at the Jinchuriki, before the sight of the blonde shattered like glass and revealed nothing. He looked to his body and saw that he was unscathed and turned to his men, only to see that they were still knocked into the water. As he turned his attention back to where the blonde was, he saw Naruto standing next to Mai with both shinobi holding a kunai. "You should leave while you can, Zhao. I'm feeling merciful today, so I'll let you and your men go," said the Uzumaki. Zhao glared hatefully at the blonde before he reluctantly made his way back to his ship and ordered his men to return as well. As the ships left, Mai commented, "This won't be the last we see of him, not by a long shot." "I know, but he isn't a problem for me, and he won't be for you with time." Mai nodded before she gained a depressed look, making her teacher turn to her. "You regret killing that soldier from before, don't you?" Mai turned away from him at his question. "I wish you'd stop reading my emotions like that, Naruto. I can't help it when I feel them rolling off of you in waves." He then placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder, making her turn and see his small smile. It's okay, Mai. So long as you feel regret and sadness for each life you take, you're still human. It's only when you feel nothing, or even enjoy it, that you become a monster. Mai's eyes began to water up before she was embraced by the blonde. I didn't want to. I never wanted to kill anyone, she whispered as she cried. Naruto just held her close and reassured her that it would be alright while Mai embraced the comfort. Mai, it will only get harder from here on, he thought to himself sadly. With the trio, Aang led the group through the tunnel-like halls of the temple with a torch in hand. It was dark due to being underground, and the only light in the temple was the few torches that glowed within its halls. We're lost, aren't we? Asked Sokka as he followed Aang with his own torch. I don't know, Sokka, admitted Katara as she walked between them. I hope not, though. There has only been a single path so far in this temple, Aang reminded them. If we feel like we've gone far enough, we could always turn back and just follow the path back out. The path before them soon opened up into a large room with a stairway leading up to an altar. The airbender had his friend stay at the bottom of the stairs as he made his way to the altar. The stone table had runes from a period long ago, though not as far as the shinobi era, that Aang couldn't make out. He held the torch above them for a better look and blew off the dust before he saw another set of runes light up from the glow of the torch. A strong will leads to true peace. One must have the will to do whatever it takes to protect the world, even if the action needed is seen as an act of evil in the eyes of others. To all avatars who come across this, if you lack the will and the drive to do what must be done, peace is but a dream and nothing more, Aang read aloud before his airbender tattoos glowed brightly along with his eyes. The glow of the avatar state caused the walls to light up with multiple jade gems and cover the room in a greenish glow. Katara and Sokka looked around as pieces of rubble around the room rose up and formed an orb of earth around Aang and the altar. Aang! They called out in surprise, but the avatar was in his own world at the moment. Vision. Aang saw that he was in an area surrounded by various lights and fog, and looked around in confusion before he sensed presences behind him. He turned to see an incredibly tall woman in armor reminiscent to that of the Kyoshi warriors, white and red face paint, and a golden headdress. Avatar Kyoshi. He whispered in surprise. Avatar Aang. I've been expecting your arrival, she responded. Although, I honestly was expecting you much sooner, when you had learned earthbending. Why are you here now when you know nothing but your birth element? I was told of this place by my friend, King Bumi. He said that many of the earthbending avatars came here to seek enlightenment. Yes, that is true, but the key word was earthbender, young avatar. It is still too early for you to truly seek enlightenment here. Aang looked down at that. So, I came here for nothing then? Not necessarily. I can still point you in the right direction. Please do, requested Aang. Seeing as you have not begun studying the other elements yet, I would suggest heading for the Eastern Air Temple, where the airbending avatars begin their spiritual journeys. Then, you head to the Northern Water Temple after you master waterbending, come back here when you master earthbending, and then head to the Southern Fire Temple when you've mastered firebending. The airbender slowly nodded and thought it over. So, I would be going in a reverse clockwise pattern? Precisely. It is important to visit each temple and gather wisdom from each one. However, the path you choose is ultimately up to you, Aang. The path you choose must be of your own violation. I understand. Thank you for telling me this, Avatar Kyoshi. Of course. Also, the man who precedes us has an important role in your time as the Avatar as well, probably more important than your role. Be sure that he does not fully give up on peace, Aang, or else not even you can stop the threats of the future, warned the Earthbender Avatar as the vision ended. Real world. The sphere of earth crumbled from around Aang before he and the other two were engulfed in spheres of light and disappeared. The lights took the trio to the outside of the temple, leaving them disoriented and confused. How did we get out here? Asked Sokka. I think the temple transported us out of there after it felt that we got what we came for, Aang offered. The temple can't feel when we're done or not, Sokka argued. Sokka, you saw what happened when Aang entered the Avatar state. I wouldn't be surprised if the temple actually did transport us out of there, especially since it lit up after Aang read that tablet. Sokka raised a finger and opened his mouth to protest before he just sighed and muttered about strange spiritual crap. Anyway, we better get back to the others, Aang suggested before the trio made their way back to the beach. That night, Naruto sat next to his student as she finally fell asleep. She hadn't taken her first kill well at all and he knew that she needed time to sort it all out. The gang except for him and Aang had already fallen asleep. The blonde still wanted to know what happened back in the temple. So, what exactly happened in there? He asked Aang. I met Avatar Kyoshi in a vision and she told me where to go when I learned the other elements. She also said that your role is important in this time, Naruto. She even thinks that it's more important than mine now. Naruto looked slightly surprised at that and commented, I guess the world still needs me after all. The world needs all of us. No single person can bring peace to the world. Well, according to the people of the world, the one person needed is the Avatar, Naruto reminded him. Even I know that I can't bring peace on my own. I'm going to need your help on this, Naruto, yours and mine. Naruto looked to his student and gave a small smile before he replied, I don't see a reason why we can't help you out. I still expect you to focus on what needs to be done though, Aang. I know, he agreed as he went back to sleep. Naruto looked to the starry sky and thought to himself, I guess helping the world one last time wouldn't be too bad. He then turned to Mai and continued, I hope Mai knows that I most likely won't survive this though. I'm sure that when the time comes, she'll understand what you'll have to do. You really believe that the Jubi is going to make a second appearance, don't you? I have no doubt in my mind. You're going to have to be ready when it does appear, Naruto. We can't afford you being unprepared for this. I know, Kurama. I know. He replied. Chapter 9, Sandy Knowledge and Hope. Again, yelled Naruto to his student as she flew through hand seals and held her right wrist in her left hand. The sound of thousands of birds chirping was heard throughout the rocky clearing they stood in as the Chidori began to form in her right hand. With her face lit up by the bluish-white lightning, Mai spotted her next target and rushed towards it. Her right hand was held low, the lightning tearing a path on the ground before she plunged it into a boulder. Her hand easily pierced into it before the lightning surged and destroyed the large rock to dust and rubble. Naruto stepped forward as she was panting slightly in exhaustion. It was understandable since this was her third try with the jutsu in a row. How'd I do that time, sensei? The Kyuubi Jinchuriki surveyed the damage before he nodded. I think you've finally gotten the hang of it. However, I want you to remember that the tunnel vision you get with this technique could wind up being your downfall if you aren't careful. It was one of the reasons why there are variants of this jutsu, he informed her as he formed his own Chidori in his right hand. He looked to another boulder and waved his lighting-coated hand, and to Mai's amazement, hundreds of needle-shaped bolts flew from the Chidori and struck the boulder. Like the Chidori Senbon, for example, with its long range. How did you maintain the control to do that? Just the Chidori alone takes all of my concentration. Years of practice plus my Sharingan allows me to see exactly how much chakra is needed. Don't worry, I'm sure you'll have it figured out in no time with my help. Thanks, but what about that other close-range jutsu you showed me the other day? That was my father's original technique, the Rasengan. You remember the two manipulations of chakra I told you of, right? Yeah, shape manipulation and elemental manipulation. Correct. The Rasengan is shape manipulation at nearly its highest difficulty, he stated as the spinning orb of chakra appeared in his hand. Notice how the chakra spins at highly dangerous speeds yet it still maintains its spherical shape. This is possible due to shape manipulation. When you learn the Chidori Senbon, I'll begin your training with this as well as increase your studies in the Gamma arts. Yes, sensei. By the way, how do you think Aang is doing in his waterbending training with Katara? He shouldn't have too many problems since it is his natural second element to learn. If any element will give him problems, it will be his natural opposite, Earth. As if the universe conspired to prove his point, the two shinobi saw a large wave of water rise up and fall, and they heard Sokka yell in surprise. Yeah, I think you're right on that, Naruto, my deadpanned. Naruto shook his head with a sigh and muttered something about the kid needing to learn control before he had his student try one last Chidori just to see if her control would stay the same. Next day, Market Town. The gang strolled through the busy, shop-filled streets of the port town they had landed near. They were running low on supplies and hoped to get some in the town. The trio had a total of 12 copper pieces, while the shinobi duo had 5 silver pieces. Unfortunately for them, Aang had decided to spend 10 of their copper pieces on a bison whistle that he just couldn't say no to. Katara decided to hold on to the remaining copper pieces after their major loss. While Naruto and Mai spent the remainder of their funds on fruits and fish, they noticed the trio enter a large ship with no colors. Naruto sighed in irritation before he and Mai followed them inside. They caught up with them just in time to hear Katara ask, "So, how much for the traded scroll?" The seller, who had a reptilian-like bird on his shoulder and was dressed in typical pirate garb, answered, "I already got a buyer, a nobleman from the Earth Kingdom. Unless you all have 300 gold pieces on you right now?" Naruto had to resist the urge to facepalm at the sight of Aang's attempts at bartering with the pirate. Honestly, who is foolish enough to try and buy an expensive scroll for only 2 copper? After his failed bartering, Aang was urged to leave by a nervous Katara. Naruto shook his head in exasperation at the sight of the scroll barely visible in her clothing, but he and Mai still followed the trio off the ship. They didn't get far though when the pirate that told them of the curios, one, on the ship ran after them followed by about 10 others, each holding weapons. "Give back what you stole," he ordered before the trio ran off. Naruto and Mai remained where they were with sweat drops forming on their heads while the pirates all gave chase. Once they were gone, the blonde led his student back inside the ship, much to her confusion, and took a gander at the other scrolls that the pirate had. "Here to steal something like your friends?" asked the captain with his hand on his sword. "No, we aren't like that," answered the Uzumaki without looking away from the scroll collection. "I know you pirates aren't as criminal as people make you out to be. You all follow a code of sorts, right?" "Aye, that we do, lad. Though, not many people are as calm about it as you are. When you've lived as long as I have, you tend to stop caring about the public opinion of many things," was Naruto's cryptic response before his eyes caught sight of a scroll with the symbol of Suna on it. He pulled it out and asked, "Where did you get this?" The captain took the scroll from the blonde's hands and took a closer look at it. "I actually won this in a game of chance against some random drunk one night. I wagered a scroll on the Earth Kingdom against it. The writing in it is nothing I've ever seen before though. That's because it's the writing of the Age of Chaos. I doubt there are many people who could actually read it these days. Are you able to?" Naruto nodded and asked for the scroll before he opened it up and looked at the contents. Inside was some description on puppetry as well as a storage seal. "Interesting. I didn't think there would be any scrolls or knowledge on this in the world." He closed the scroll and asked, "How much would it take for you to part with this?" "Well, seeing as it's so rare with the limited number of people capable of reading it, I'd say that this could easily go for 500 gold pieces, replied the captain with a smirk. Mai's eyes widened at the ridiculousness of the price, while Naruto closed his eyes as if in thought. He slowly opened them while focusing his Sharingan on the man. The 3 tomo spun in a slow, hypnotic manner while the captain's eyes slowly glazed over. "I'm sorry, I believe I misheard you. How much did you say it was?" "It's free of charge," answered the pirate in a dazed voice. Naruto gave a small smirk and pocketed the scroll. "It was nice doing business with you," he said before he grabbed Mai's shoulder, and the duo disappeared in a swirl of wind. With the trio, Forest Lake clearing. Katara growled in frustration as she was once again unable to perform the water whip from the waterbending scroll she liberated from the pirates. Aang didn't help her calm down when he performed the technique flawlessly while offering advice. In fact, she went off on him in anger before she noticed that his feelings had been hurt by her outburst. She quickly apologized to him, and he accepted it just as the shinobi duo arrived in the clearing. "I thought you said that we weren't like those three to that pirate, Naruto?" Mai said with a smug grin. "The thing about being a shinobi, my cute apprentice, is that deception is your greatest weapon," he replied with a smirk while Mai blushed at being called cute. "Besides, there probably isn't another person on this earth that could read this scroll, let alone use its teachings. Even I would have incredible difficulty with this since the control needed is extraordinary." "How much would be needed?" "A higher level than that of shinobi medics," he replied seriously, making sure she understood how difficult puppetry was. "The only reason I'm truly keeping this is because it is a piece of Suna's and my time's history." Mai nodded before Sokka called out, "So, you stole from them too?" Naruto's smirk returned as he replied, "Actually, the captain graciously gave me this free of charge. He was very civil once we got to know him." Aang and Katara laughed while Mai shook her head with a smile and Sokka rolled his eyes. "Those pirates aren't exactly going to be too thrilled when they find us. I say we pack up and get moving." "I agree. We have our supplies, and then some, so we should leave while there's still light out," Mai added. "We shouldn't stay in one place for too long, after all." "Well said, Mai. Although, this is where we temporarily part ways, Aang," Naruto stated, making the airbender look confused. "Why's that?" Katara asked, equally confused. "I need to check on something, and the three of you need to get to the North Pole as fast as you can. Mai and I will meet you there in a few weeks' time." "Will you guys be okay?" asked the airbender in slight worry. "We'll be fine. We're shinobi after all," Mai assured with a small smirk while Naruto nodded. "All right then, we'll see you in a few weeks," Sokka said as he got on the Appa's saddle followed by the other two and Momo. Naruto nodded before he had Mai got on his back and launched himself into the air. The trio watched them move through the air before the shinobi were out of sight. With the shinobi, 2 days later, Naruto and his student were making their way on foot through a small forest towards a random Earth Kingdom town. He pulled out a map of the world that he had bought back in Omashu and noticed that they were about a day's travel away from the Siwang Desert, where the rumored largest library of the world resided. What Naruto was mainly focused on concerning the desert was that it was where Suna once resided. He had planned to see if any part of the ancient shinobi village still remained before he moved on to the other 3 villages of Kiri, Kumo, and Iwa. Seeing as he had the only info on Yuzu and Konoha, due to his final stay in each village before their destruction, Naruto wanted to collect whatever he could of the remaining hidden villages in hopes of keeping everything from the shinobi era alive, and in one place. When he told of his plans to Mai, she was slightly surprised at the size of his goal, but she promised to help him achieve it. With their destination set, Naruto and Mai traveled via Kazipo to the Misty Palms Oasis, the only source of water closest to where Suna would be. While it would have been a day's travel on foot, with the unique method Naruto had, it would take them 2 hours tops. With the trio, while the shinobi made their way to the infamous desert of the Earth Kingdom, the trio had stopped at a port town where a large storm had come with fairly little warning. Sokka and an old fisherman were out at sea in hopes of getting a good haul, but the storm made their trek turn into them being lost at sea. While Aang was telling Katara of his final moments before his frozen state 100 years ago, the fisherman's wife begged them to save her husband from the raging storm. Aang, Katara, and Momo climbed onto Appa and quickly made their way through the raging winds and pestering rainfall before they spotted the fisherman and Sokka. After getting them off of the sinking boat and onto Appa, they tried to safely make it back to shore. Unfortunately, a large wave towered over them and engulfed them in its watery wake. While most fell unconscious from the impact, Aang was able to enter his avatar state and surround them all in a large sphere of air before he steered Appa out of the sea and toward shore. Along the way, he saw Zuko on the deck of his storm-wrecked ship, and the two glanced at one another before Aang and the others flew out of the prince's sight. With the shinobi. As soon as Naruto landed about half a mile away from the oasis, he paused and looked at a random direction. He had felt the large pulse of energy that Aang had released upon his entrance into the avatar state, and was curious as to what sparked it. As soon as the spike of energy reached his senses, it faded back into calmness, making him put the thought of what happened aside in favor of what was happening now. Led by Mai, the two entered the oasis and walked into a small bar-like building, where they each got a refreshing drink and a room for the night. While his apprentice slept, Naruto studied the map once more and made marks on possible locations for where the lost village of Suna could be located. Apparently, the patrons of the bar each called the desert a death wish to travel across due to its heat, lack of water, and vast size. The Uzumaki waved off their words since he had been through the deserts surrounding Suna many times in the past. To him, this was just another one of those times. The next morning, Naruto filled 3 water skins full of water before the shinobi duo began their journey. To protect them from the raging, sandy winds of the desert, Naruto surrounded them in a dome of air. What made the dome a godsend for Mai was that it also kept them cool with its constant movement and trapped breeze. They walked for what seemed like hours, sparingly taking drinks of water, before an interesting sight came before them. A lone fox with a scroll in its mouth moved through the sands with ease and without any signs of stopping. Well, there's something you don't see every day. Although, I am curious, most of the animals in this time are hybrid creatures. So why is it that the foxes are still single species? Maybe the foxes couldn't think of breeding with a different species, suggested the Jinchuriki, making his tenant hum and oh. Perhaps. In any case, that kitsune obviously is heading somewhere in this kami-forsaken desert. Follow it. Naruto mentally nodded before he and Mai picked up the pace and followed the vulpine creature. It wasn't long before they saw the fox reach what looked to be the top of a tower and easily scale the wall before entering a window near the top. Naruto and Mai walked up to the tower and the blonde put a hand to its structure before he sent a pulse of chakra into it. Using the energy as a type of echolocation, Naruto was able to get a small glimpse of the size of the buried structure. It amazed him that the building was easily the size of a palace, if not larger. Naruto jerked his head to the window, and the two shinobi walked up to it with chakra before they gazed into the tower. Before their eyes were countless books and scrolls placed neatly and orderly on many different shelves on multiple levels. The fox they saw earlier was also seen running down a hallway before they lost track of it. Naruto took out a kunai and stabbed it into the wall closest to the window before he tied the end of a 50-foot rope, and the two shinobi climbed down with it. As soon as they touched the carpeted walkway, Naruto felt a powerful presence approach their position. Mai, get ready in case we need to fight our way back out, he ordered as she nodded in consent. Before their eyes, a large black owl with a pure white face and coal-colored eyes walked up to them. While Naruto was a tall height of 6 feet 1 inch, the owl easily stood at a height of nearly 10 feet. Around the owl's neck was a worn-looking brown sash with an all-too-familiar symbol on it, Suna's symbol. "What are you two humans doing here?" asked the great bird. "I thought I had made it clear many years ago that humans are no longer permitted within these halls." "We meant no harm to you, wise one. We were merely crossing the desert in hopes of finding any remains of the very village you were the symbol of," answered the blonde, making the owl's eyes narrow. "How do you know of Sunagakure? Where did you hear of the ancient home of my people?" "I knew the Yondaime Kazekage, Sabaku no Gara, thousands of years ago. He was my brother in all but blood." The owl looked closer at the Uzumaki and studied his features, the whiskered face, golden hair, and bright blue eye with an obviously transplanted red eye. "You are Naruto Uzumaki, the Sandaime Yuzukage of Yuzushiogakure, as well as the fabled child of prophecy. My people spoke of how our summoners saw you in such high regard." "Yes, Gara was a wise man worthy of our contract, the only one who proved his worth before the world fell to darkness. I am Wanshirtong, he who knows 10,000 things, and keeper of this vast building of knowledge. Naruto and Mai bowed to him out of respect and greeting before Naruto said, "You know of me, but this is my apprentice Mai Nara. I plan to have her succeed me in the future as the Sannin of the Gamma clan." "It's an honor to meet you," said the Nara respectfully. "It is a pleasure to meet you as well, child. Now Uzumaki-san, the knowledge of Sunagakure that you seek is within these halls. I have also found plenty of information on Iwagakure, but my knowledge seekers have been unable to find anything on Kirigakure, Kumogakure, Kanehegakure, and Uzushio-gakure. The information and history on the last two are with me, Wandano. They are of my people, and they will stay with me. Of course, however, I ask that should you find anything on the other hidden villages that you bring it to me." Naruto nodded and pulled out the puppetry scroll before handing it towards the knowledge spirit. "Then I believe that this is yours by right." The owl nodded in thanks before his large wing took the scroll from the blonde's hand. "I had heard rumors of your return to the world, Uzumaki-san. I honestly was quite skeptical at first of them all, but I see now that they were indeed true. If you would come with me please, I have something for you from Gaara-sama." "Gaara left me something?" "Indeed, he left you a letter before he left for his final battle for Suna. It shames me to say that his efforts were unsuccessful, and that Suna fell that day, while we of the Fukuro too clan held on to his letter to you. I'm sorry I wasn't there for Gaara and his people," Naruto said solemnly. "It is in the past, Uzumaki-san. Gaara-sama died nobly and for his people. He was an honorable man to the very end." "That he was." Naruto agreed before one led them to a room with nothing more than a single scroll on a pedestal. The owl waved a wing to the letter and Naruto approached the pedestal before he picked it up. "To my brother, I doubt that I will survive long enough to see you again. I pray that this reaches you eventually, for I want you to read my final words to you. You are the world's hope, Naruto. You are its light in the very darkness that it is now heading towards. I know that throughout our many talks that you have begun to doubt the idea of peace, but I ask of you not to give in to hopelessness and fight for the one thing Jiraiya-sama left you, fight for his will he passed on to you. You once told me that he dreamed of a world of peace for all people. Well, even though I fear that this day will be my last, just know that I believe in his dream, and that I will support you in both life and death. In this scroll are two things I offer to you to emphasize my will being passed on to you, my gourd of sand and the contact of the Fukuro clan. May you use them in my memory and fight for what we all dream for deep down in our hearts. May you fight for peace. Sabako no Gaara, your brother." Naruto was clenching the scroll as tears fell from his eyes. "Gaara, I'm so sorry for not being there for you. I hope that you can forgive me for that. You're right though, I have been falling deeper into hopelessness and losing faith in peace." He wiped the tears from his eyes and used his chakra to release the storage seals within the letter. In plumes of smoke appeared a 4-inch scroll and a large gourd made of hardened sand. With his eyes burning in determination and growing hope, Naruto strapped the gourd to his back and used his blood to sign the summoning contract. "But no more. From today until the bitter end, I will fight for the dreams of you, Jiraiya-sensei, and the world. I will once again fight for peace, I promise you." Naruto turned back to his student and the knowledge spirit before he walked past them both and out of the room. Mai quickly caught up to him and walked beside him in silence. She saw that his strides had more meaning in them, and that he emitted an aura of determination, making her smile slightly. In a moment of boldness, she took his hand in hers, making him look to her, and gave him her own look of determination. He gave her a small smile and gently squeezed her hand before he let go of her hand and kept walking. Behind them, Wanshirtong followed after reading the letter from Gaara that Naruto gently left on the pedestal. In his mind he thought, "Gaara-sama, we of the Fukuro clan will honor your last wish. Though it is not common, I will allow Naruto-san to keep our contract and summon us to aid him in his endeavors. 1. I need to know if Gaara had any scrolls that had information on his control of sand. I've never used it before and need to know how I can utilize it. Of course. Follow me and I will show you all that I have in regards to Sabako no Gara. The great owl took the lead and guided them through the halls of the vast library. Along the way, Naruto smiled and thought, things are looking up for the future. Bottom of the Northern Air Temple Mountain. After a battle for the temple between the trio and Earth Kingdom refugees against the Fire Nation, a Fire Nation war minister by the name of Chin smirked at the sight of the crashed war balloon that the refugees used to win. He had two firebenders use their natural element to fill the balloon once more with air. This day may not have been a victory for the Fire Nation, but the defeat we have suffered will open the gateway to many future ones. I want this balloon ready for travel in 10 minutes. We have a lot of work to do. Called the war minister as his men began to work harder to get the balloon up into the air. That's it for this reading. Hit like and subscribe for a free ticket pass going to the different worlds of anime fanfictions. Looking forward to having you on board again.